that all questions are fair game, and we want to make this an engaging meetup tonight. So rather than us stand up here and just talk to you for the next 30 minutes, we want to make it a conversation. Yeah, April's got the question cards, so thank you for filling those out, if you had filled those out.
So we'll start with the cards, and then we will proceed with any questions from the audience. And feel free to jump in at any time. The first question I have here is mining only with Bitcoin, and is it a good idea to do mining even though it's late in the game?
I have my opinion, but go ahead.
Yeah, it depends on the approach you're taking. I don't think it's ever necessarily too late. It's too late if you think you're going to do it on like a laptop. Although it was last month, like 3 people in a row who do very low single, they have like 1 miner, like within like 3 days, they all won a block, which means you get 6.25 Bitcoin every time you win a block, if you know about mining right now. So it's possible for anybody to participate. That's sort of the beauty of Bitcoin. Anybody can go in, but if you're looking at it as a serious investment, you got to remember the high costs, especially now with all these chip shortages and everything else. You're looking probably close to 20 grand just for 1 miner, and the energy usage is a lot. There are some creative things. There's a lot of people, there's these things called mining pools, if you don't know about it. That's really what a lot of people will do if you don't have a huge budget but still want to go in and get a miner. They can join a mining pool. Then you got everybody in the mining pool, like if everybody in this room, we just all work together to work a block. And if anybody in the room, it's almost like the lottery. When you go to work and everybody wants to play the lottery, 1 person wins, we all win. It's the same thing with a mining pool. So that's a good way to sort of get in. Jump in and make a little bit of money, and if you're smart with it, you don't waste all that heat and everything, because some people are now using their miners. They'll mine, but they'll also use it as a hot plate. They'll put it in a room, like if you have a little game room or a mom room or a dad room or whatever, and that's the heater instead of paying for a space heater. So there's ways to make it sort of worth it. So no, never too late. Just depends on your goals.
On that point, I know a guy in Calgary that uses the excess heat from his Bitcoin miners to heat his grow op. So he's getting pretty creative with it too. And I wanted to address one part of the question, which is, I think it was Bitcoin the only mineable crypto? No, it's the first mineable crypto and the first cryptocurrency. So it started the revolution. But there are other protocols that also allow you to mine them in a similar fashion. And they're all very cutthroat and hard to profit off. You have to have like millions in the game unless you're in a cloud mining pool, like he said. So it's not really a great investment right now, but it's still a necessary part of the infrastructure.
Yeah, and I will say, I think we're going to see mining become less popular over time. Of course, Ethereum's trying to switch to proof of stake, so even they're moving away from that mining model in that way, in the Bitcoin way. And you know, I don't want to say there's like a one coin to rule them all. Of course, like we typically participate in EOS.IO networks as DLT. But I think that it's going to consolidate like any other traditional type of market or competitive environment around a few players that do very specific functions. Of course, Bitcoin being the most popular and probably the most popular in the future.
What was DLT?
So we used to be called EOS Detroit, and now we're called Detroit Ledger Technologies.
Oh.
Yep.
I'll just add to the whole with the mining and the convergence. Even in the original, when Bitcoin first came out, that was actually always part of the idea, which is it would start as this sort of fair game, anybody can enter. And anybody can always just enter, but it was always thought that eventually mining data centers would be the miners because of the amount of processing power you would it grows, you're not going to be able to just do it off of your $400 laptop.
So if you look at the California, the kilowatt per hour energy is like the cost of kilowatt per hour is like more. So definitely the people in California who are interested in mining would like to go for cheaper resorts. Maybe Detroit has like cheaper kilowatt hour. So and they are like willing to pay 10 to 15% margin if we can able to do like how much ever. So do you think like we can pull such initiative? We Detroit Blockchain Center being a non-profit, can we do such kind of initiatives if there is a possibility?
Everything's a possibility.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about mining, proof of work mining, is a lot of it's about some people look at it as a race to the cheapest energy, which it sort of is, but it's sort of who's the most efficient with energy, right? And that's really where it is. So you have your cost, but that's assuming you're just sort of plugging into a wall and paying a bill. And there's a lot of things going on in Texas right now, and sort of the leader in the US since the China ban, where there's a lot of innovative things people are doing as major mining firms to make proof of work mining not the race to the cheapest energy, but being the energy user of last resort. Because there's a lot of wasted energy, no matter what kind of form you're talking about, whether it's coal, solar, there's a lot of energy wasted. So proof of work type mining can keep that and bring down costs for everybody. So there's a lot of potential to do a lot of things.
The proof of work and distributed ledger models, I thought that the appeal was the distrust of large entities and the trust of the everyman. Everybody coming together, mining and having a copy of the ledger. But what the thing you're saying, Ethereum moving to proof of stake, whereas coin is the proof that or is the ledger itself, technically. Does that kind of ruin the trust that the people have in the crypto community? Does that impact it at all? Am I saying it right?
Yeah, I think I know what you're getting at. So, you guys mind if I take this one? All right. So to rephrase the question, just so that I make sure before I answer, is the move to different consensus algorithms to run these different ledgers or blockchains essentially seeking efficiency? Is that undermining the say that the individuals have as a community that are trying to perhaps create a grassroots economic system with these blockchains?
Yes.
All right, and so that's a good philosophical question, and I have, my own opinion of how I look at that. So I'll start there, since philosophy at the end of the day ends up being a lot of opinions. So for me, I've watched the blockchain ecosystem unfold over 9 years now, studying it from a technology background, and there's a lot of different intersectional kind of conversations that come out of it, whether you're talking about law and regulation, computer science and cryptography, economic systems and how you design and model them, and monetary systems. And so there's a lot of convolution. It's really easy to get bogged down in the conversation. But to me, at the end of the day, they're tools. It's going to be up to people, whether that's companies that are trying to build software products or grassroots initiatives that are organizing in some other way to use that technology to see, the ends that they're trying to see met done. So it's going to come down to how people coordinate and use that technology, and I think you can use it to facilitate, greater opportunity or access to opportunities, financial opportunities. You can also use it to facilitate a scam. So it's really complex in that regard. And I think you'll always have decentralization purists that think that it has to be 100% the most decentralized possible, but as I was just talking to the gentleman up front before the meetup about, it depends what you're trying to get done. So start with what you're trying to get done and then work backwards to figure out what blockchain design suits your needs the best instead of the other way. And then doing so, you might be able to pick, okay, well, let's align with this blockchain like Bitcoin or whatever, because that one checks the boxes we have for what we're trying to do. Or, hey, we're a really high volume game application that's using blockchain. We need a lot of efficiency for our economy to run because people are doing millions of different things every day, so we need a more efficient blockchain that might have design trade-offs on decentralization. But the trick, I think, is finding the right optimization between decentralization and efficiency. And so it's a sliding scale, it's not binary, it's trying to figure out how do we, if you're familiar with the term game theory, which is thinking through how incentive systems work, thinking through how we can put different rules in place that will influence the behavior of people. Like, hey, if I show up every day, I get $5 or something like that. That's the game theory. All the token economic systems that we look at in crypto, they start and design around game theory. If people can stake and earn this, then what's that do over time? Are we sourcing that from inflation, or is there some other benefit or cash flow that we're bolstering that staking with? So it's balancing the supply and demand around incentives. And I think that's the hard part, figuring out the right game theory to get done what you're trying to do with the tool. And maybe the current cryptos aren't sufficient for what you brought up. Maybe they're partially there of this sort of power to the people movement. So I'll stop rambling. No problem. Good question.
And I was going to say more so just to add to that, I don't want to go down this path too much, but from a more practical sense, if you even just look at blockchain networks that have smart contracts, wouldn't it be great if, when, let's say you're a shop owner, I buy something from you and the smart contract just automatically pays the state sales tax and you don't have to file and do all of that work to do it. Wouldn't that be great? Those are the kind of things that blockchain networks can enable, and it doesn't even, you're not creating a new token. I think that's when you look at these government issued digital dollars that they're talking about implementing at some point, right? I think that's where you can really see a benefit from something like that. And a lot of people in the blockchain space right now are resistant to government right now, but I think that's also a net benefit that it can provide if it's implemented correctly. And we see that with NFT platforms right now, like with Facings, they're using atomic acid standards, and anytime somebody buys or sells something, that artist is getting 6 to 10% or whatever they set of that sale price. So we're already doing it.
So just a brief question. If I'm a grassroots community person and I want to have an outsized influence on the network, or I want to participate in the network, would I be doing myself a better service by mining the cryptocurrency or by running a node? Like, can I have an outsized influence by running nodes?
Yeah, especially in like a Bitcoin network type situation, absolutely. I'm a big believer in how do you know anything is secure or works, and it's just because it hasn't broke yet, right? And the more it gets tested, the more sound you can feel about how good it works. And a network like Bitcoin has been hammered in those kind of things. And when it comes to running the nodes, that example, if you were around in like 2017, 2016, when like the big block wars were happening, or with SegWit, with the user activated soft fork, there was all these big events that were happening where it came down to the users, a node operator, not the miners, not the companies, just regular node operators who turned out to be the ones who made the decision and forced the rest of the network as the community. So sort of the point both of you were bringing up, that has so much influence. It's not as monetarily satisfying as if you're a miner who wins a lot of blocks, but you are really securing the network and driving the direction of what that network is. And the same could sort of be true with other networks that rely on nodes or semi-passive participants.
Yeah, I mean, EOSIO networks. The thing that we commonly say is that we're politicians that know how to run servers, right? We're basically, every day I'm going on and trying to get votes from voters so that we have the right to actually validate those nodes. And we have to prove ourselves as competent, one, but then also providing additional value adds in terms of software, in terms of spinning out facings and all that sort of stuff, right? So,
quick question for one of you guys, just for the audience's benefit. What's the difference between a validator or a miner and a full node or a node? Because that might not be clear to everybody.
All right. So sort of combining them, basically in either system there's two kinds of participants. One who actually collects all the transactions that are happening within the network and orders them, figures out either the cryptographic proof, if you're working on a proof of work thing, or is randomly selected in like a proof of stake type situation. And that would be like your miner or validator. They're the ones who get to say like, all right, everything in here checks out and sends it out. And that's sort of a miner validator versus a node, or I don't know what it would be called in a proof of stake or delegated, but
full nodes, API nodes.
Right.
There's different names for it.
Their job is to basically, and this sort of comes back to your point, their job is to accept it, right? The easy part, what the computer does is checks, like in a proof of work thing. It's like, all right, they solved the puzzle, cool, we'll accept it and spread it out. But they're also looking through the transactions, they're also looking through what's happening, and it's up to them to sort of decide like, yeah, this is a valid chain. If they get a fork, if you're a node and you receive two different messages from two different validators or miners, your node has to decide which one is going to be the valid one. And then it becomes consensus of the network, 51% or two-thirds, plus one, to determine like, all right, this is what we consider is the real blockchain, this is it. And the other one almost always just dies off. Very rarely does it ever turn into like a fork where you have splits. I don't want to get forks and confuse people.
The next question is, can I make an NFT to give it to someone for free as a gift? And which digital wallet service do you recommend?
I'll take the NFT question. So yes, you can. There's a number of different ways you can make an NFT today, and they're of varying levels of cost. So first thing you want to do when you wish to make an NFT is sort of figure out what your budget is. If you want to make NFTs cheaply, I recommend the network that we build on called Wax. You can make an NFT for about 20 cents, so it's totally cost efficient to be able to make that and give it to someone else. If you're looking to mint an NFT on an Ethereum network, that's where your costs are going to go up higher, and it sort of is dependent on what's known as a gas price. But on the low end, that's like at least $30 usually, and it depends. So there's also some other networks you can make NFTs on. I know Tezos, Solana, Cardano, Layer 2s on Ethereum like Polygon all enable NFT creation as well. And what we're doing at Facings is making it easy for any traditional entity or company to launch lots of NFTs, whether they want to integrate that into their own game as a game studio or integrate that into their own marketing campaign as a brand. So we're making tools to make that really easy, that individuals will be able to leverage as well. And then as far as wallets go, it depends what you're trying to do. If you're more interested, so you said wallet, you didn't say exchange, so that means you probably want to hold your own keys. There are some great wallets that are multi-currency that I like. So one of them is called Atomic Wallet. That one's great. You can hold, like hundreds or a lot of different mainstream cryptos there. If you're holding Ethereum tokens, you probably want to use MetaMask. If you're holding Bitcoin, you might want to use Mycelium if it's on your phone, or there's some other ones. There's Electrum on desktop. So it just depends what you're trying to do. But multi-currency wallets, like I think Math Wallet is one of them, Atomic Wallet. Those are pretty good. Middle of the road kind of catch-all, do a lot with one app kind of wallets. Any thoughts, guys?
I don't have anything else to add. I mean, I could tell you EOS-IO ones, but that's not really super useful.
Yeah, if you want to hold your own Wax or EOS or Telos, we use something called Anchor Wallet, which also has a mobile app as well.
I'll add one thing when you're talking about the creating an NFT piece. I think it would be important for everybody to start being a little bit more specific as they speak of NFTs, because NFT is really just a very grand concept, and where you want to go and what you want to do. If you just want to create like a family photo and turn it into an NFT, is very different than if you want to put your house deed onto a blockchain and then gift the house down to your family or something. It's a very different use case, and it's a very different set of circumstances you'd want to do. So I'd encourage anybody here who's learning about NFTs or interested in NFTs, don't think of it as this uniform one thing, right? NFT is a wide range of things. So it's important to know what you want to do with it.
Yeah, definitely, Holly. So she asked, just to rephrase, should an artist publish the same NFT in multiple blockchains? I have a stance on this, and Facings does too. We don't think so, for the reason you mentioned. You're basically diluting anyone who bought your first run of NFTs. If you did it on one blockchain, and then you went and published the same exact thing somewhere else later, it's like an artist doing multiple print runs. They probably should disclose to the first buyers that they plan to do that. So I wouldn't say that you just shouldn't, but you should probably communicate your intentions before you take anyone's money, because a lot of NFT owners are buying the NFTs as a way to patronize the artist in this case, but also because they believe there's some inherent amount of scarcity that would be undermined by doing multiple runs. But we know with, let's say vinyl, there's multiple successive print runs of vinyl, and that's fine. But they're clearly marked as such, and they have different values. So the first run is worth more than the second run. And it's kind of an expectation in vinyl that would happen, that there would be more runs in the future. Whereas in NFTs, that's still not, the culture of NFTs is still forming and figuring itself out in a sense. And when I say of NFTs, to Nate's point, of art-focused NFT releases, because there's a lot of different things you can do with it.
And I'd also just add that different blockchains isn't equivalent to different retail outlets. If you're an artist, you might want your stuff in Walmart, Target, the local shop. That's a different scenario than different blockchains. It's not equivalent. Different blockchains, like Rob said, you're like actually just, I'm making an original, giving it to you, and then here, I'm gonna make another original and give it to you. It's like, which one's the real original? It's sort of both are, but they both aren't.
Does an NFT have to be linked to a PERK? can you create and sell an NFT based on just the art itself?
Yeah. Basically, it's all subjective. Some folks, and I think it's pretty accurate, think all value is subjective, and so the value assigned to a collectible or some object, some physical piece of property could be different depending on if it has sentimental or nostalgic value to you. If you know the artist, it might be worth it to spend money on their art more than if you don't personally know the artist. And so NFTs are also subjectively valued. They don't have to have perks. If you're trying to increase the value of them, then having more things the NFT can do than just be a digital piece of property is probably worth considering, but there's no hard and fast rule that it can't just be media and a new way to patronize an artist. Hope that answered the question.
Okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit. Where do you see entry-level employment opportunities in blockchain and crypto? What education or skill set would lend to a new graduate?
Entry level, we need all levels. This is an industry, not a little niche thing. And when it first started, pretty much you had to be like a developer, because that's all there was. You had to be a developer even to figure out how to run it. Then you had to sort of be in finance or a developer to understand any of it. But now it's to the point they need law, marketing, art, UX design, developers, business strategists. Like, it's an industry. And every industry has the same jobs, you're just focused on a different thing, whether it's automotive or designing chairs or crypto. So whatever it is you do, I'm sure there's tons of entry positions, and there's probably a bunch of senior positions that a lot of entry-level people are getting into quickly because it's such an empty market. Because people think you have to be this super coder developer to get into it. But like on this stage, there's really only one real developer. You know what I mean? There's plenty of space for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I got into this kind of faking it till I made it, right, in a way. I mean, I was always a business person, but I have a little bit of development skills. That always is going to help you, I think, in a space like this, even if you're in a business profession. I would say that almost of any tech profession, right? If you're a marketer, it's helpful to know how to do all these things, how to build a web page, right? How to set up a WordPress, things like that. You're never going to get around I guess, like the technical aspect of it. You kind of have to just be a generalist in that sense if you're going to be successful. But I mean, if you're looking at like even the university programs right now, we're still even in a really, really early space there, because most of the like robust programs are actually offered by like student clubs rather than the university themselves, because they haven't gotten them accredited yet. Like I think U of M has their blockchain group has like a 10-week like kind of boot camp style thing, but it's literally taught by the kids that go there, right? So I think same with MSU. I mean, they have like these 200 level courses, but there's not really a comprehensive blockchain education at most of these universities. So you either have to learn on your own, or you have to do like a specialized kind of like certificate program right now.
Yeah, as far as skills required to succeed, to just add a couple sentences, a growth mindset, being willing to learn new things, being willing to persevere even if you don't understand right away, and like give yourself some time to let the knowledge sink in. Understanding how to find high quality information online, which isn't easy. That's another huge, and I say that as a developer, as Nate mentioned, that's my background, so that's a lot of what developers do. I don't know how to do this, I gotta plug these two things together, let me go Google it, and then start reading documentation and stuff. So not that that's something, I think that's something that can benefit anyone who works online, anyone who works on computers, not just developers, and especially Newer graduates, if they're younger, nowadays are probably more natural at that too, because they're more sort of raised in the internet age. But yeah, just being willing to learning how to learn.
Do you see distributed ledgers being used to transact real estate deeds?
This is like my favorite question, which is Rob pointed at me. But yes, I mean, I think that's really, at the end of the day, I think we'll get to a point where titles and deeds are actually NFTs, right? Like, we're just so used to right now thinking about NFTs as like the monkey picture that people are spending $400,000 on to go to the swanky parties in New York and Miami, and like that's really cool and all, but like at the end of the day, these things can store a pretty significant amount of data, and if it's put on a ledger, right, then you can self-custodian your own deed. You might not want to do that on every network, and there's a lot of barriers to entry to doing that. Like, of course, you have to integrate with the county offices, right? Like, I'm literally closing on a house next week, and all the hoops that we have to jump through, and the land bank having to send their approval and all that stuff. So there's not like really a standard that's developed yet, but I think that we'll get over these problems eventually. It just takes time and the right connections, to like Laura and things like that, right? So.
Yeah, a lot of the tech for those interesting use cases is the easier part, and the harder part is figuring out how to move the slow behemoths of various levels of government or industry standards that might need to change in order to integrate blockchains in a real way. Talking with the gentleman up front earlier about notarization. This is a perfect use case for notarization, but whenever we need to get something notarized today, we still go find a notary and bring them all the paperwork, print it out and have them actually sign stuff that we might later scan back in. So it's about timing too. There's a lot of really cool stuff we can do, like the deeds use case, but it's going to be dependent on forces in the industry or regulatory or whatever kind of helping push that forward, or just being the right time. Like NFTs came out in 2017, but people really didn't talk about them a lot until 2021. So it took 4 years for that to sort of sink in and then catch fire and be something in the public consciousness. So I think that these other use cases that especially involve traditional institutions will take a little longer.
Next question is, what happens when the last Bitcoin is mined?
Because I'm the Bitcoiner on the stage. The fees take over. The idea of why Bitcoin's distribution method was designed the way it was about fair distribution. And fair distribution doesn't mean make sure everybody has the exact same thing. It's the people who participate in this network that's worth zero in the beginning and spend the energy costs, take the time to figure out how to work it, improve it. They're the ones who get the first shares. But anybody being a permissionless network, anybody can do it if you want to. You don't have to ask. With any network, Bitcoin or any network, game theory, which Rob mentioned earlier, is really important to it. And it's like, how do I incentivize people to come in, not just to come in for money? It's the thing a lot of people get wrong on crypto in general. It's very speculative, but that's a side effect of creating a new asset class. It's not the point of the asset class, right? But you have to incentivize, in Bitcoin's case, the miners to spend the energy to plug in miners, to spend their computer resources. And the idea was always, by the time we mine the last Bitcoin, the network should be big enough users should be using it, or fees cover things. And this has been a lot of contention because, Bitcoin's simplicity is the genius of it all. But at the same token, it also causes the more simple you make something, the more ambiguity you have on what that really means, right? Bitcoin's supposed to be cash. Well, eventually, right, as some people might think, like one day, but not today, or other people feel like, no, it should be today. But there was a lot of writings about this early on, and sort of the consensus amongst early developers was that eventually it's almost like going back to the gold standard. We, as regular individuals, probably wouldn't interact almost ever with the Bitcoin network. The banks would have to reformat, the big financial institutions would reformat, and they would begin backing money off of Bitcoin. We would still deal with a sort of cash layer type that we're familiar with now, and they would just settle on the Bitcoin network, sort of like Visa. You use a Visa, I just used it to buy a drink. The bar doesn't get that money today, they're not gonna get it tomorrow either. It's gonna take about 2 weeks for Visa to settle the network. Bitcoin takes about 10 minutes to do the same thing, but that's sort of the idea. So the transaction fees would be huge and big enough to incentivize those few miners, as we mentioned earlier, which would probably be data centers. It would be incentivized for them to do it. It would be a big enough transaction to do that. But that is philosophy, as Rob pointed out, and that's the theory, that's the game theory they sort of Satoshi designed. Once we mine the last Bitcoin in about 150 years from now, the fees will be enough. I don't think we'll have to wait that long. I think we have another halving coming up in about 2 years, which means the supply gets cut in half again. And at that point,
The price of Bitcoin would have to be enormous, though, right? For that to be.
A side effect, this price of Bitcoin would be large. You're probably looking at anywhere from a 500,000 to a million plus Bitcoin at that point. But this is also why they've made it, 100 million decimal places into Bitcoin, with the concept that you could switch to decimal points because nobody likes to deal with decimals and all that. But it's why you have such small units called Satoshis, because right now Satoshi is worth like, I don't know the exact number, maybe the 20th of a penny. But one day, one Satoshi might be what we think of as $1. And there's 100 million of those in one Bitcoin, which would be suitable for a full money supply. But that's if the game theory works out. I think we'll see that in the next 20 to 25 years. We don't have to wait the full 150.
If you're local to the Detroit area, be sure to join us every month for a new blockchain mashup. All events are posted on our Meetup page and on Twitter. And don't forget, like, share, and subscribe to the Detroit Ledger Technologies YouTube channel.